All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Appreciate all of you joining us tonight. We're in the study of Revelation, and we began chapter 2 last week. We want to pick up there and just do a real quick review. I passed out a little map to you there. Kind of gives you an idea of the layout of these churches. And if I could borrow one of yours right there real quick, I can kind of show you. I thought the island of Patmos was laid out on here, but it is not. If you'll look below this square, right here where the 7 churches are, right below the square, there's a little tiny yellow dot. It's hard to make out. That's the little island of Patmos, okay, out there in the Aegean Sea. So it'll be about right here where my small finger's pointing to. Can you pick it out? Okay. That's where the island of Patmos would be. About 70 miles, roughly, off the coast of Ephesus, there, out there in the Aegean Sea. That's where the book of Revelation was given to Paul. Okay, so that's that penal island, a little rock island. They were sent there to just quarry it, break up rocks and stuff like that. So hopefully that helps. Now, if you notice the layout, Ephesus being right there on the very coast of the Aegean Sea. Does everybody see that? Okay, if you go up and then you hit those, I believe it's 2 cities going up. I don't have one. And then if you go to your right and then go right back down, you'll end up at Laodicea. Does everybody see that? Okay, so that direction is the postal route. Remember us talking about that? That if you was the postman or the in that day delivering mail, that's the route that you would go. And so it's laid out that way geographically, I should say. And if you notice also the letters are in that order. So it's kind of neat there, isn't it? So the ancient postal route, very knowledgeable to all those people, you know. They did not have the email and stuff like we have today, so it was all certainly snail mail back in those days.
Are the first 3 actually on the water?
Ephesus is the one that's mainly the port city.
Okay, it's the major port.
It's the major one.
Those others look like
they are a little bit further in. Yes, sir.
Not on the water?
Not according to my map, Bill. Now, Ephesus was in its day, was a major harbor in its day. All of the major traffic come through there. Today, the port is silted up. So there's no real city there. There's only the ruins there. They actually moved the city 5 miles inland. So the city that you would go to today, Ephesus, is not the ancient city. The ancient city is just a bunch of ruins, and mainly because of the harbor. Just silting up, couldn't get in there, and so nothing but ruins there today, but some beautiful ruins. From what I understand, some of the most beautiful ruins probably in existence today are there. So maybe one day we can get our computer in here and hook it up a little bit and show some of those ruins on the screen. Y'all like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Seemed like in that day everything was kind of associated around the water.
Yes, sir.
That was their major method of transportation.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the trade and all come through Ephesus. The merchants, of course, would come into that harbor, bringing their goods, selling their goods. You had the King's Highway coming through there as well, making their way from the other places to Rome. A lot of the slave trade was brought right through Ephesus. Some of the early church writers tell us that the Christians that were going to be put into the Colosseum were brought through Ephesus there in chains. And so it was a major place at that time. It housed one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Temple of Diana. We talked a little bit about that last week. 60-foot columns, I believe it's 213 or something like that, 230 of those columns there. And you can still see some of them in the ruins can you imagine 60-foot tall columns there? Magnificent building. Terrible things going on in it, as you can imagine. But it was one of the ancient wonders of the world. Okay, somebody else asked a question last week. I didn't have an answer for it. The question was, how long did John spend on the island of Patmos? John was living in Ephesus after the fall of Jerusalem. Jerusalem fell in 70 A.D. It's believed that John fled to Ephesus there with Mary. You remember that Jesus had put Mary in the charge of John. Remember that took place on the cross. Jesus looked out and he saw John and the women there in front of the cross there, and he says, "Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother. John, behold your mother." He knew evidently that Joseph had already passed away at that time. He was going to die as well. So he put the care of his mother, Mary, into John's hand. That's what took place there in the scripture. And so John looked after Mary until she died. It's believed that she died there in Ephesus. So all of the things, the imprisonment and all that would have took place after Mary had died, after she was deceased there. We believe that John penned the Gospel of John and all three epistles there in Ephesus. So he was the pastor at the church at Ephesus, a leader there. All this was taking place, taking care of Mary, all of it taking place there in Ephesus. And the Roman Emperor Domitian came along, and he was a very, very wicked man, to say the least. He was one of these that viewed himself as deity. He set up a major place of worship there in Ephesus. And in those times, you would have to say Caesar is Lord, and you'd have to pinch a pinch of incense and declare that Caesar is Lord. Otherwise, they'd take your life. They called that, according to my sources, is something called Lordy Day. And Lordy Day, I know it sounds kind of odd, but that's how they would refer to it, was a day in which people would be made